In the Horn of Africa, a conflict has been unfolding for more than 3 decades. A conflict that rarely makes global headlines, yet shapes an entire region's politics, security, and identity. This is the story of Somalia and Somaliland, 2 regions, one internationally recognized as a state, the other functioning like a state without recognition. Today we will explore how this divide began, how it turned violent, why the Lasanod conflict shook the region, and what the future might hold. Let's begin with the basics. Somalia is a recognized country in East Africa, but after the fall of its dictator, Siad Barre, in 1991, the central government collapsed. The country fell into warlordism, famine, and years of civil war. During this chaos, the northern region, Somaliland, broke away. On May 18, 1991, local elders, clan leaders, and political groups declared independence. They claimed the borders of the former British Somaliland Protectorate. Since then, Somaliland has built its own government, military, police, currency, judicial system, and even issues passports. Yet, no country officially recognizes it. Not the UN, not the African Union, not even neighboring Ethiopia or Djibouti. Somalia, on the other hand, insists Somaliland is still part of our territory. And this disagreement sits at the heart of today's tension. To understand the conflict, we must rewind. Somalia's modern borders were created by European colonial powers. The north was controlled by Britain, the south by Italy. In 1960, British Somaliland gained independence first. It was an internationally recognized state for exactly 5 days. Then, it voluntarily united with the south to form the Somali Republic. But the union was full of problems: political imbalance, unequal power distribution, northern regions feeling marginalized, southern-dominated government decisions, economic neglect. By the 1980s, tensions exploded. Somaliland's main resistance group, the Somali National Movement, SNM, fought against the dictatorship of Siad Barre. In response, Barre's military bombed northern cities like Hargeisa and Burko. Tens of thousands of civilians died. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed. So in 1991, after Barre was removed, northern elders said, "We entered the union voluntarily, and now we are leaving voluntarily." This became the foundation of Somaliland's independence claim. If Somaliland has peace, elections, stability, and functioning institutions, why isn't it internationally recognized? There are several reasons. African Union policy. The AU does not want African borders to be redesigned. If Somaliland is recognized, many other regions may demand the same. Somalia rejects it. Somalia argues it must remain one united country. Geopolitical caution. Major powers prefer stability. Recognizing Somaliland could create new conflicts in the region. Clan politics. Some clans inside Somaliland, especially in the east, do not fully support independence, creating internal disputes. These disagreements eventually led to one of the most serious conflicts in recent Somali history. The Lasanid War. Lasanod is a strategic city in the Sul region. It sits between Somaliland and Puntland, a semi-autonomous region of Somalia. The city is home mostly to the Dhulbahante clan, many of whom felt, "We are not fully represented within Somaliland's political system." Tensions grew for years, but in late 2022 and early 2023, protests erupted. Security forces responded. Deaths were reported. This sparked a full-scale armed conflict between Somaliland forces and local clan militias, often aligned with Somali federal forces or Puntland factions. Within weeks, Heavy weapons were used, artillery strikes hit civilian areas. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Tens of thousands fled the city. According to humanitarian organizations, 150,000 to over 200,000 people were displaced. A catastrophic crisis. In some reported weeks, over 50 to 60 deaths were confirmed by doctors on the ground, with hundreds wounded. But exact casualty numbers are hard to verify because journalists had restricted access. Both sides released biased casualty claims. Many bodies could not be counted during peak fighting. The impact on civilians was devastating. Families walked for days to escape shelling. Makeshift camps formed along the Somaliland-Somalia border. Women and children were often the majority of those fleeing. Aid groups reported severe shortages of clean water, hospitals overwhelmed, schools destroyed, homes burned, livelihoods lost. Entire neighborhoods became ghost towns. For many who fled, this was not the first time. Some had lived through Somalia's civil war in the 1990s, and now their children are growing up in another conflict. To understand why the Lasanod conflict escalated so quickly, we must look beyond the battlefield and into the politics behind it. For years, residents in Sool and Sanag argued that they were not fully represented in Somaliland's political structure. They felt marginalized. They claimed development funds were unevenly distributed. They believed political offices were dominated by other clans. This frustration grew silently until the killing of a popular local figure in late 2022 triggered massive protests. Instead of calming the situation, the government's response intensified anger. A political crisis turned into a social crisis, and finally, a military crisis. Local leaders formed a new administrative body aligned with the federal government of Somalia, openly rejecting Somaliland's authority. This move changed everything, because now the conflict was no longer just internal. It became Somaliland versus local militia, plus elements connected to Somalia, plus Puntland's influence. A regional struggle layered over a national dispute, fueled by decades of distrust. Lasanod is not just another town, it is a corridor that connects Somaliland's heartland, Puntland's territory, supply routes to Ethiopia, and trade roads linking the Red Sea to the interior. If Somaliland controls Lasanod, it strengthens its territorial claim. If Somalia or Puntland influence it, Somaliland's independence project becomes geographically weaker. That is why both sides fought fiercely, not because of the city alone, but because of what the city represents. In early 2024 and 2025, a surprising geopolitical shift shook the Horn of Africa. Somaliland and Ethiopia entered negotiations about a potential deal involving port access, maritime cooperation, and in some claims, discussions that Ethiopia might consider recognizing Somaliland in exchange for Red Sea access. This made Somalia furious. Somalia declared that no foreign country has the right to negotiate with Somaliland as a sovereign entity. Somali leaders warned Ethiopia publicly. Diplomatic relations nearly collapsed. African Union officials became alarmed. Regional alliances trembled. The entire Horn of Africa entered a phase of uncertainty. Why? Because Ethiopia is a landlocked giant. It desperately wants Red Sea access, something it lost in 1993 when Eritrea became independent. Somaliland, on the other hand, wants recognition. A deal could benefit both. But if Ethiopia recognizes Somaliland even partially, it will undermine Somalia's territorial integrity, encourage separatist movements in Africa, trigger opposition from Egypt, Eritrea, and Djibouti, create a new geopolitical rivalry in the Red Sea basin. So what started as a border conflict in Lasanod is now woven into a much bigger geopolitical chessboard. You might wonder, where is the international community in all this? Surprisingly, global powers have remained cautious. The United States wants stability in the Horn because of anti-terror operations. It avoids taking sides on Somaliland's recognition. The European Union supports humanitarian missions, but avoids political recognition issues. Gulf countries have economic interests in ports, security, and trade routes. They quietly watch, waiting to see which side gains stability. China is expanding influence in Ethiopia, Djibouti, and the Red Sea. A new port arrangement involving Somaliland could shift China's strategic calculations. Turkey and Qatar are heavily invested in Somalia's federal government and military training programs. They oppose anything that weakens Somalia's unity. As a result, no major nation wants to make the first move. Everyone is waiting, watching, calculating. And while diplomacy stalls, civilians continue to pay the price. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of this conflict is how unclear the casualty numbers are. Because journalists were restricted and both sides reported propaganda, exact figures vary widely. But humanitarian organizations agree. 150,000 to 203,000 people were displaced. Hundreds of civilians were injured. Dozens to hundreds were killed in different phases. Hospitals received waves of casualties after artillery strikes. Mothers carried their children through dusty roads. Entire families walked for kilometers to escape shelling. Many left behind their homes, businesses, everything they owned. Doctors in Lasanod described days when emergency wards were overflowing. Gunshot wounds, shrapnel injuries, crush injuries from collapsing buildings. Shelters were overcrowded. Water was scarce. Medicine was insufficient. Aid workers said the displaced population grew faster than they could respond. For these civilians, the political debate of statehood, borders, and recognition means nothing. All they want is safety, food, water, and a place to call home again. Conflicts like Lasanod often suffer from an information blackout. Here's why. Areas become unsafe for journalists. Social media spreads misinformation. Authorities restrict access. Both sides exaggerate or minimize casualties. Independent monitors are blocked from the front lines. This creates a fog of war, a cloud of uncertainty. Even today, analysts debate the true scale of destruction. What is clear, however, is this. The impact was enormous, the displacement was massive, and the political consequences are far from over. As the dust settles on the Lasanod battlefield, one question rises above everything else. What happens now? Analysts point to three realistic futures. Future 1, a negotiated autonomy deal. In this scenario, clan leaders, Somaliland officials, and Somalia's federal government enter mediated talks. International partners, like the African Union or IGAD, step in. Local governance is restructured. Autonomy for Sul and Sanag becomes possible. This would reduce violence. It would allow humanitarian access, and it might calm regional tensions. But there's a challenge. No side wants to appear weak. Compromise requires trust, and trust has been missing for decades. Future 2, a frozen conflict. This is the most likely outcome. Lines may stop moving, but peace never truly arrives. Both sides hold their positions. Small clashes continue. Displaced families remain in camps for years. Somaliland maintains its claim. Somalia maintains its opposition. And Lasanod becomes another gray zone on the African map. This scenario avoids large-scale war, but prevents real peace. If Ethiopia continues to pursue access to the Red Sea, and if Somalia views that as a threat to sovereignty, the conflict could spread beyond just Lasanod. Neighboring states may take sides, great powers may step in, and a local dispute could transform into a regional showdown. For now, diplomacy is holding this scenario back. But the tension is there. Ethiopia and Somalia once shared deep historical ties, but the Somaliland issue has pushed their relationship to the brink. If Ethiopia recognizes Somaliland, even partially, Somalia may sever diplomatic or trade ties. Regional alliances may shift. Eritrea and Egypt could react strongly given Red Sea competition, and the Horn of Africa would enter a new era of uncertainty. At the same time, Ethiopia argues, we are a nation of 120 million people. We need access to the sea. Our economy depends on it. Somaliland responds, we want recognition. We want the world to see our stability. Somalia says, no deal can be made without us. Beyond the maps, borders, and diplomacy lies the human story. A mother in Lasanod carrying her child through dust-covered roads. A father searching for missing family members after shelling. A young boy who once dreamed of school, now living in a refugee tent. A soldier on either side, unsure why this war began in the first place. For these people, geopolitics is not a theory. It is a daily struggle. They do not care about the recognition debate. They do not care who controls which district. They only care about survival, dignity, and hope. But hope is fragile in conflict zones, and every new round of violence pushes communities further apart. The tragedy is not just the lives lost, but the futures stolen. Some might ask, why does this conflict matter? Why should the world care? Here's why. The Horn of Africa sits beside one of the most important shipping lanes on Earth. Trade routes from the Middle East, Africa, and Asia pass through this region. Any instability here affects global economics, migration, and security. Somalia's fragile peace could unravel. Somaliland's long-standing stability could weaken. Ethiopia's ambitions could reshape the map, and foreign powers may exploit the chaos. Ignoring this conflict does not make it disappear. It only makes its consequences bigger when they arrive. Yet, despite the challenges, there is an opportunity. Somalia seeks unity. Somaliland seeks recognition. Local communities seek representation. Ethiopia seeks access. And the world seeks stability. If all these interests align, even briefly, the Horn of Africa could witness a new chapter in diplomacy. As we end this documentary, remember this: the story of Somalia and Somaliland is not finished. It is still being written by leaders, by diplomats, by communities, by ordinary people whose lives are shaped by decisions made far above them. Somaliland continues to build its institutions. Somalia continues to rebuild its unity. Lasanod continues to heal from the scars of conflict. And the region waits for a breakthrough or a breakdown. A time will reveal the next chapter. But today, one thing is clear. In the Horn of Africa, borders may divide land. But it is people who carry the weight of history. If you found this documentary meaningful, informative, or eye-opening, please like, share, and subscribe. Should Somaliland be recognized as a country? Or should Somalia remain united? Your voice matters. Your perspective matters. And together, we can bring more global attention to stories that deserve to be seen and heard.